So let's see, we have, is Holly entered from Florida yet?
I haven't seen any pina colada yet, Jack.
No,
Oh, boy.
I told her I want to see her at, like, out on the veranda drinking mint juleps.
So we are live on YouTube as of now.
Okay, it's good to know.
Okay.
I'll start the recording here too.
Okay. So I think the way we're going to approach this is we'll do the pledge, we'll do attendance, then we'll do public comment, and then the 2 resolutions, and then we'll do the workshop on the comp plan. That way we get the business done, and then we have 7:30, we'll go into executive session. So that should give us a good hour or more to talk about the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And I'll bring David Turpinning in.
I was just checking the time, but we're live stream. See you.
Yeah, so bring David in.
Yep.
And Adam, one of the things I told Ellen is that tomorrow you and I will each send her a kind of email summary of what we said tonight. So for minutes, she doesn't have to be writing every sentence down.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're missed. Hi, Chief. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there, everybody. Sorry,
Hi, Tina.
I'm late.
Hi,
Trying to tell
everyone.
Hi, Elaine.
Hello, everybody.
So we're waiting. Holly's in Florida, so oh, here we
Oh,
go.
there she
Hi.
is. I just let her in.
Okay. And the other thing we'll do when we get to the executive session at 7:30, Adam, you will flip your hosting stuff over to Tina.
Yeah, and yes.
And you'll turn off the recordings and streaming and all that.
Yeah, and if there's anybody else, in the meeting, we'll put them in the waiting room or remove them. Actually, probably remove, because then they won't be able to get back in, because it's an executive session.
But there will be 4 people, I think, coming in just for that.
Okay.
So I don't know at what point they'll drop into the meeting, but they will be here at 7:30.
Okay.
That's why I flip it over to Tina, and she'll take care of that.
Okay.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
How's the sunshine?
It's been a little hazy.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, we feel so
you get 5
sad.
inches of snow. If you didn't get snow, we're not interested.
I know. I'm so glad I didn't see that last storm.
Well, for the record, Danny and the guys did a great job.
I have no doubt.
Yeah, they really did.
All our plows are up and running now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's
I
cool.
didn't, maybe it's just me, but I didn't see a single complaint on Facebook.
I didn't either. I was just going to say that.
There was somebody who wrote, has anybody seen a plow yet? Like
did see that.
complaining, and then 55 people weighed in and told her where the plows are.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny.
That was very heartening. Okay, Ellen, I got 5:59.
Yep.
Okay.
So Adam, you set up a separate Zoom link for the executive session, or it's the same one?
Same
You just
one.
sent a separate email.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just getting through my email, sorry.
No worries.
All right, you guys can all still hear me, right?
Yep.
Sure.
I just want to make sure I didn't push over the wrong button.
Fix the clock, Jack.
Okay. This special meeting of the East Greenbush Town Board is called to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
allegiance
flag
to the flag
of the United
of the United
States
States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
which
to
it
the
stands,
for which it
republic for which
stands,
it
one
stands,
nation,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
For all.
Supervisor Conway,
present.
Counselor Tierney,
Present.
Counselor Kennedy,
Present.
Counselor Matters,
Present.
Counselor Fritz.
Present.
Okay, rather than go around for a meeting like this, do any of the counselors have anything they want to say before we start? No? Okay, so what we're going to do, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to public comment. We'll start there. Then we'll consider the two resolutions. And then when that's done, we'll go to the workshop on the comp plan. And when we get to the workshop, I'll set it up and Adam will speak to the work he's been doing. And then we'll have a discussion. So we'll get to all of that. So for public comment, is there anyone who would like to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, David.
How are you? One of the things I mentioned at the last meeting for this comprehensive plan update was the fact that there's nowhere I can see in the actual documents around the website where there's any kind of provisions for those people who live along the commercial zone of routes 9 and 20 or Route 4 for that matter. And those people who have, like myself, have lived next to commercial properties and most currently are having issues with their commercial neighbors. My concern is the fact that if you don't do something about the bordering properties, residential properties that border commercial properties on those two zones, 9 and 20 and Route 4, I don't think you're gonna have a lot of happy people, especially when you have a rapid development coming down the pike. There's there's a few investors that have purchased property along Columbia Turnpike. That's one example it's not necessarily many investors, it's a small group of investors. And if you don't rein them in to allowing some sort of a buffer zone, which is going to increase the quality of life for the residential properties next door to them, that you may have some blowback. That's one of the comments I have.
Okay.
The other comments I have is that I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I do not see yet any kind of a comprehensive plan structure, in the actual paper form where it actually outlines in tabular form what can be used in what zone, so forth and so on, just like the one that was in 2008. I think before you approve anything and approve the plan itself to go forward, you need to publish that for the public to see. And my last comment is that I'm really disappointed, again, the number of people from the public that actually attend these meetings and they do any kind of input to it. I mean, I was at the favorite town meeting place, the town dump, and I bumped into somebody and I said, did you know there's going to be a comprehensive plan update meeting tonight? Well, on Wednesday night. Nope, didn't even hear about it. So I think that there's something is missing between the town and the town population that may not be getting either the implication of the town board meetings or just even not even know that they exist.
Yeah.
And that's what I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Adam, tell me if I'm wrong, but on that idea of buffering neighborhoods, the land uses in the comprehensive plan are far too broad for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, that's correct. At this point, it would be, it could be, it could start with as high level a statement as make sure that adjacent uses are compatible, and then work from there. And then, we could suggest certain strategies based on our experience. We could suggest certain types of uses that may present compatibility issues. So for example, some uses require special use permits right now. So we could go into varying levels of detail, but the actual specifics would be reserved, really for the zoning update. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Okay, hearing and seeing no one. Let's go to the resolutions. Resolution 34 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the town supervisor to sign contract amendment number 2 with H2M Architects and Engineers to provide additional professional services in connection with the construction of upgrades to the 3rd Avenue and Barracks Road pump stations, and authorizing use of GEIS funds. I move this resolution. May I have a second?
I will second that.
Is there any further discussion on this resolution?
Just in case anyone was confused, Resolution 16 of 2021, which we passed at the January business meeting, was amendment number 1. This is a slightly different amendment. This is geotechnical services, and it's $12,000. So that's what's going on here.
Supervisor Conway,
Yes.
Counselor Tierney,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Matters,
Yes.
Counselor Fritz.
Yes.
So resolution 35 of 2021 authorizes the finance office to solicit requests for proposals for building department software. I'd like to move the adoption of this resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this resolution?
We budgeted for this, and the one question about this is when we look at software for the building department, we want to find software that is compatible with the planning and zoning department, the assessors department. So we're starting at the building department to see what's out there, see what proposals we get. But the goal is to find kind of an integrated software program. Right now, the building department, when they do a building permit or a certificate of occupancy, they walk down to the assessor's office and bring a piece of paper and give it to them, or the assessor comes down and says, do you have this? This way, everybody would be on the same system. The assessor would see when the building department makes a move like this. I think we all know that we have to improve our automation in the way we do business. So we start here.
Exactly.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
Counselor Matters,
Yes.
Counselor Fritz,
Yes.
Supervisor Conway,
Yes.
Counselor Tierney,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we're going to start talking about the comprehensive plan. We're not as far along on the town board processing the draft submitted by the steering committee as I was hoped we would be. Adam's working on a lot of redrafting with track changes, so we can look at that. But I didn't want to postpone this meeting because it's an important issue and I want to keep everyone's head in the game. And there's also a couple of issues that I would like to discuss. And after Adam gives an overview of what he's been doing, I'll raise some of them. And if anyone else has any issues, we can look at those as well. The steering committee did a great job. Okay, they really did. They took the community responses from the survey. They listened at the public sessions. And MJ did a nice job of putting it together. it's a good job. The final say and the adoption of the plan is the responsibility of the town board. And I want to make sure that when we do that, we're not just rubber stamping the steering committee's draft, that we're taking into account the experience and issues that we've learned about as members of this board. And I think that's very important. People say to me, well, is that public input? And I would argue it is. And we're elected representatives. So we are for people who are looking for the right plan, for their elected representatives to take this very seriously, work hard on it, is really important. So this is the right project. When Adam came to us and said we need to update the comprehensive plan, the zoning map, and the GEIS document, those of us who work in town hall were experiencing that need on an almost daily basis. That, you know, we'd run into things, and the town has changed so much since the 06 land use study and the 08 zoning map. So it's the right time, it's the right move. It's another one of those things that I take pride that this board doesn't shy away from the difficult things. There may be fallout politically, they may be unpopular. It doesn't matter. This has to be done. And in addition to those three major products, what we're going to get out of this is we're going to understand how we can standardize our process of review, how we process land development applications, how the planning board should be responding to things. And so I think overall it moves us forward. So Adam, why don't you, I asked Adam, as you guys know, I asked Adam to look at this draft and add to it, delete from it if he saw things that he didn't think should be there, add recommendations, add text, add emphasis. And I did that because MJ did a great job, the steering committee did a great job, the public did a great job. Adam's our planner, and Adam has been through the last 3 years with us and knows the kind of battles that have been fought in front of the town board, has seen some of has dealt with every application that's come through on land development. And I think it's also fair to say that Adam has the full confidence of this board. Adam is a very smart gentleman and a very good planner. So the way I wanted to approach this was have Adam take his shot at this draft, because he's been facilitating and organizing and moderating and mediating. Now it's time for our planner to plan. And so once Adam's done, we will come back and have another session like this to go over when we have plenty of time to assimilate what he's come up with, because there's a lot there. So Adam, why don't you tell us what you've been doing and what's left to do? Tina, did you want to say something?
I just want to let them know, thank you for your work on this, but the information that you sent today, I haven't had a chance to review. So I just want you to know that before you begin presenting on it.
Thank you, Tina, and Mr. Supervisor, town board members. So yeah, I'm going through this at multiple levels, right? So at the first level, I went through the draft as it's posted on the website, and noted various things that I wanted to follow up on, and everything from like semicolons to updating images of town hall, and then noting sections that might need to be looked into a little bit more or reorganized. So that's one thing. So at the end of this, that's kind of the desktop published product. So I started there, right? So then the second thing I've done is gone through the profile and inventory, which really was a way for me to get back into the information that MJ assembled and that you do assemble as, as a planner to understand where we are, currently, because that's part of the process. So the way that that relates to the plan is something also that I've, the plan document itself paid attention to, because the profile and inventory section is the hard data, right? It should be the fact base coupled to the challenges and opportunities that are initially sort of identified part of the fact through the public input, which is also part of that fact base, right? So the profile and inventory is doing several things, but it's more facts. So there are, all of the sections in the comp plan document itself are supported, by the profile and inventory. So, everything from housing and demographics and history to transportation, community and infrastructure and governance and public utilities, and economic development, natural resources. So I've gone through that. There's a couple of sections that need some more data. I think we need to update to the extent we can. There's some census data we can use. There's more recent American Community Survey, for example. There's also some other basic information that I think we want to include in there about like the condition of our, the extent of and condition of like our road network, for example. So Dan sent over the condition inventory, of our, I think there's one bridge in town, that type of stuff. So using that, so there's a little bit of work left to do there, develop a few extra sections, add some data. So in terms of the comprehensive plan document itself, I started with the sections that I thought needed, were probably maybe not most important, but seemed to need a little bit more work, more detail, more specificity, maybe some reorganization. So that was, economic development, placemaking, and natural resources and agriculture. So I've pretty much gone through those sections with a focus on, adding the plan document itself. It does a couple of things, in addition to like describing the process and all of that. And I think there's probably some things we need to add there around, coronavirus and exactly what we're doing right now, which is meeting remotely, and how we responded to that. But that's mostly good. Some of the demographic section and information, I think we want to bring a little bit more into the plan itself, in a little bit more detail. But then going into each sort of section, there's what the plan does is it starts with the vision, and then it starts to lay out goals for each of the 8 or 9 or so sections that that the plan is organized around. And so you'll notice that each of those sections has has specific sort of where do we want to be elements to it. So that sits on top of, the committee did a lot of work on those goals and the vision as well. So in theory, it sits on top of the, the profile and inventory. What those individual sections, in addition to laying out kind of that vision and those really salient facts from the profile and inventory, and kind of distilling that, you'll see some of the information kind of brought forward from the profile and inventory into those sections. It also provides examples, and it starts to provide a framework for the actions and to support the various actions and objectives and policies that the town that are identified as how the town is going to achieve the elements of the vision, the goals in particular, but then the vision itself. So you'll see in the placemaking section, for example, there's a fairly extensive discussion of placemaking itself, what that means in its various dimensions, from the community and the people level to the place and sort of material level. And so it starts to sort of bring in some of that planning framework to then support the actions that are identified to achieve the goal. So in the plan itself is an important place to kind of set that framework, right, of what does placemaking mean, and so what should the action sort of be oriented toward. So for those and then the actions themselves, right, each of those sections I'm going through and adding, mainly there's several aspects of that. One is to validate those and, just in light of the rest of the material. Another is to potentially add actions or sort of rework the organization of them and the structure to, fill in gaps of information that I thought needed to be added in the profile and inventory, or other issues that I think we want to maybe confront more, not necessarily confront, but sort of highlight more in the plan. And then also adding specificity to what Jack said. We've been living the current framework now, for several years, and there are things that you learn, and just being in town hall, being engaged in the issues, working with developers, working with the planning board, working with regional stakeholders, so adding sort of specificity there is another key, aim that I've been sort of approaching the plan with. So, I've gone through those three sections, and then I think there are some sections that are probably going to take less time. Probably the governance section, for example, but going through those remaining sections, and I think the final section that I'll probably approach is the future land use section, because again, that kind of sits on top of everything else. And also one thing too, to kind of, and I think Jack and I have discussed this, and probably it'll come out tonight too, is the actions. The plan does a prioritization exercise. It has a prioritization element to it. So I think we that's probably among the last things we want to do, and we want to be careful about how we organize that, because a lot of those things are going to be things we know we need, but we may not have money for. There are going to be things that we know we're going to do immediately, like the zoning update and the GEIS update. And then there are going to be things that we want in there so that, the community sees what we need to do. And also that other stakeholders, like the development community, and then, for example, New York State DOT, when they come through and they look at doing sidewalks on Columbia Turnpike, they look at our plan documents. They contact my office. We're doing our program planning for this year. What does your plan say about this corridor? So in there, we need material in there to alert and to guide other agencies in their decision making, and make it very legible to them where we want to be. And then, it serves a range of other purposes, such as grant applications and that type of stuff. So, that there's a fair amount of work left to do. And it's, those sections cover a lot of ground. It's a comprehensive plan, right? So, so that's, that's kind of where we are and my objectives, and then, the work remaining. Thank you, Jack, for the opportunity, and members.
Okay. Today I just read what you did with placemaking and natural resources. And placemaking is a tightening up and adding of some detail and specificity. The natural resource section is substantially rewritten. And maybe rewritten isn't the right word, because a lot of what's there stands. But one of the things Adam and I talked about is how the natural resource inventory wasn't integrated enough into this plan. And so if you want to have an interesting look at how this process is working, I recommend that chapter, that you look at it, because what Adam did was really take what was there, which was good as far as it went, and made it better, made it stronger, and brought all kinds of variables in, that some of which come from the NRI that weren't there. And I think we've all agreed that the natural resource inventory we want to be a foundation of this comprehensive plan. And so after Adam's work on that, it really does that much better than it was doing it before. So what we're going to do is let Adam continue to rip. I keep telling him, clear your schedule. If any developers are whining at you, send them to me. Do as few meetings as you can and get to work on this, because we have to adopt the plan. And I also think one important issue is that if when we finish with what Adam's doing and we agree or disagree with what he's done, we bring together another draft, we're going to have to look at that and decide whether we should have another public hearing. That if it's enough of a change, then we need to have a public hearing. So just like last time, we put the draft on the website, a week or two ahead of time, and then we would have the public in. And a boy can dream. I wish we could do that in person, but I don't know. I don't know when we're going to get to that point. So that's basically what Adam's doing. I had some sorry. I'm getting my COVID report for the town today. I had some issues that I wanted to talk about on the philosophical level with this group, and I wanted Adam to hear this discussion so he'll get some sense of how we're looking at this. One of the things that struck me was how conservative the land uses map is, how much it looks like what the land uses are now. And I think that speaks to a couple of issues. One, and you saw this in the comments on the community profile, people want this town not to change too much. They want it to, they're already concerned about the level of change. They're very concerned about the pace of change. And one of the things I think this plan does is slow things down. And I think that's very important. So I don't know if any of you got that same impression from reading it, but if you look at the land uses map, it looks very familiar. Residential transition versus what we have as residential buffer in the zoning law. There's some differences, but for the most part, the town is laid out a certain way. People want the eastern part of town to remain rural. And if the day comes where that land starts getting developed, then this town is just going to look like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it would just be overbuilt. If you go down to the coast, the port and 9J, there's certain uses along the coast. But then as you go up the hill, there's nothing you can do there. It's the topography and the slope is just too much. So some of the things in a plan like this are dictated by the way the town is, the topography, its location in the capital region, and so on. And I'm not saying I'm complaining that it's a conservative, that I think it's a conservative map, but I do think it's worth thinking about and talking about.
if I could add regarding what you said, Jack, about the eastern portion of the town in terms of development, I think as long as the town, well, ultimately the town board is in a position to regulate the water and sewer districts, that would be key in terms of kind of, bridling that sort of development. As you can imagine, it's less desirable for such development to extend out, the kind of proliferated development to extend out beyond those water sewer districts. So that's kind of a positive, I guess, tool, and sort of, kind of having some element of control and a prudent control, as opposed to having things sort of beyond your control, I suppose.
Yeah, infrastructure is critical because it does set limits on development. We've had our first meetings on consolidating the sewer districts this year. And one of the things we learned from consolidating the water districts is how we draw the boundaries of the sewer district. The consolidated sewer district will have huge implications for where development can go and what kind of places. So you're absolutely right, Rick. That's a practical set of limitations, the infrastructure, because Adam, I think if I'm wrong, but if you put somebody in the sewer district, there comes a point where you have to provide sewer service for them.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because they're paying, those property owners are paying the freight,
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Other thoughts on the map? And as
So,
Adam said,
I
oh, I'm
think
sorry.
you started the comment by saying that it's a philosophical question, correct?
Mhm, mhm.
I guess that's something that we anticipated, that it would be somewhat of a maintain and improve approach.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
So
That's a good way.
are you asking us if we agree with that approach, or if we have concerns with it?
Well, basically I'm asking you that, and then the next thing I want to bring up, and we don't have to mix them up, but just so you see kind of what I'm getting at, is Regeneron, and what are the limits to growth of Regeneron in the town of East Greenbush, because they swallow everything. So the land uses in the zoning map are going to be critical to deal with that, because the fact is when you say maintain and improve, that's it, maintain and to the extent we can do smart growth. But we do have, a big fish in the pond, and it's a voracious fish. So, but yeah, if you have any comments on the improve and maintain and improve is a good way to put it. That's what I think we're trying to do.
And forecast where those larger projects that would require zoning changes. I mean, we're doing a little bit of forecasting too, is what you're saying too.
Yeah.
Can I ask, do you think that we want to be having sort of an extension of tonight's workshop for another session, or is this going to be it really?
No. I actually toyed with canceling tonight because we didn't have enough material, but I thought there were some philosophical questions, and then the executive session that we'll do later, I said, why don't we just have this conversation? This isn't the workshop that I envisioned. And
but it's a nice kickoff. It's a nice kickoff, though, really.
Well, and that's why I say philosophical, because when we get to the, as we dig into the specifics of the plan, that Adam's version, I would like some of these ideas to be in everyone's head, to not to tell you how to think about them, but just that these are things that need to be thought about as we go through this.
Right.
So I guess just to repeat, you're asking us philosophically if the current town board agrees with the philosophical conservative maintain and improve approach, or if we're looking for some more radical
So fire away, Tina.
I'm comfortable with maintain and improve.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have to kind of agree with Tina on the maintain and improve. Just kind of the information that we heard from, the constituents at the meetings, as you're talking to people, people are very interested in keeping East Greenbush green. That's something you hear quite often, not losing all the trees, not losing who we are currently to development. At the same time, they do want to see development along key corridors, but they don't want to lose what we currently have. So I think a maintain and improve is a good goal, I think.
Right.
Bridget, are you leaning towards more of a further conservative approach where there would be stricter land use?
No, I'm from what I'm seeing right now, I'm pretty comfortable with what we're looking at as a starting point, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think if I could add, I think as far as you mentioned the corridors, Bridget, I think the comments that I've heard over time have been, to deal with 9 and 20, which we were all keenly aware of, but to kind of get more of a rein on Route 4, because there's sort of a proliferation effect we all are aware of along 4. So it's sort of a, let's kind of, there's a lot of activity. There's been a lot of, most voracious, development in one context, I suppose, on 4. But there's been, kind of a, there's been sort of a lacking of that same interest, obviously, in 9 and 20. So if we could kind of balance the two through going forward when we do our rezoning, which I always think is key in terms of, when it really comes to the practical matter of economic development and seeing the kind of development you want ultimately along those corridors, obviously the rezoning is going to be crystal clear at that point in terms of how that's going to happen. But yeah, I think that those are things that I've taken in over time in terms of differentiating between 4 and Columbia Turnpike.
I always had a dream that if we could get Columbia Turnpike to the right place, that would alleviate some of the traffic and congestion on Route 4 if we could create a balance between them.
Right.
But I will say this, since Adams really, and I think the plan pushes overlay districts, overlay zones, that Tina and I had that in our platform 6 years ago, that when we looked at the Columbia Turnpike, we divided it into 3 different places, just like the plan does. And we thought that, we don't know what Adam knows, but we thought that you'd probably need a slightly different approach in each of those 3 districts. It's one of the things I liked about the placemaking section of the plan is placemaking is a really interesting way to think about what the plan says. The gateways where you come into town, the overlays on Columbia Turnpike, the idea of strengthening the historic neighborhoods, and any new residential developments should be in character with what's adjacent to it. And then the idea of a town center or a town square. I think that, or looking at the library and why as a potential for making more of a place out of what's there. I thought the placemaking is a really good concept to structure the things we need to look at.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for putting the summary together and emailing that. That was really, really helpful. I, like Tina, hadn't had a chance to review Adam's really comprehensive and hard work up till now. And I obviously want to do that. And I'm very pleased that we're going to, kind of extend our workshop.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure, based on the metrics for tonight, I did go through, I was kind of focusing on section 4, to be honest with you, under economic growth. And I wasn't sure, I made some notes and I had kind of, some questions and clarification. I wasn't sure if, based on how you want the rest of our session tonight to go, whether it's appropriate for me to kind of ask those questions and to get into that detail, or would you rather save it for another
No,
night?
I think that flows from what we were talking about.
Okay,
So go for it.
go for it. Okay, appreciate that. So I'll just kind of, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of direct this to Adam, if that's all right. So Adam, under section 4, a lot of good, detail and a lot of good notions being proposed here. And obviously, under the Columbia Turnpike section, it's nicely noted, in terms of the potential that Columbia Turnpike still has, which is great, because that acts as a springboard, obviously, for what we all want to see happen down the line. It's interesting. Jack, you remember Jeannie Casatelli, I think.
Yes, sure.
Well, Jeannie, back in around 2000, 2001 or so, it was before the actual DOT construction contracts were let for all that road widening and improvements, all the improvements that went on back then. She, together with her community organization, her community network organization, she really promoted. I remember back then, because Bob Angelini was supervisor, and the town had an interface with DOT on how it was, going to be, how the town was going to be sanctioning, the ultimate plan for what 9 and 20 was going to look like, after the 2002 construction began. And Jeannie was really promoting some aspects of 9 and 20 that you see currently out in Colony. You see, like, if you're on Central Avenue, for example, right at about the confluence of Wolf Road and Central Ave, just slightly east of that, you notice where you see the center median with some ornate development, and it basically acts to kind of slow traffic, that kind of thing. That was the kind of stuff that she was really promoting. And I remembered, at the time, unfortunately, she was sort of rebuffed. And, in retrospect, when we see this in the comprehensive plan now, it was just, I couldn't help but think back to that time, when those things were being promoted.
Mhm.
And I also can't help but think that if this board was operating back 20 years ago, who knows? Maybe 9 and 20 would look a little different than it does now. Look a little differently than it does now. So that's just a comment of mine, really. Couldn't help but think back to that. So under recommended actions, Adam, under for B1, where it says focus growth within key activity centers, and it lists obviously Columbia Turnpike and Route 4. But just a kind of a question where it says focus growth, how would that in a practical sense, how would that focus, in terms of actually, the verb, if you will, focus growth, how would that happen? I'm just trying to envision in my mind as an example or examples how the focusing of that growth would actually take place.
Yeah, I think, so maybe to start at, there's a couple of dimensions of that, right? So some of it is more of the soft type of strategies. That may not be the best word, but, working with local businesses, working with, local organizations that operate and advocate for, for businesses to, to promote, to act, for the town to actively, like, promote space, to have an inventory of, commercial space, and really to, instead of spending resources elsewhere, like attracting, more regional or national chains to the Route 4 area, maybe the town adopts a strategy like that. So there's kind of those types of strategies. I think in terms of the zoning, I think part of that is not expanding or very carefully expanding commercial uses, commercial zones outside of those areas, right? So it would be, and also incentivizing. So those types of things. The code talks, not the code, but the plan talks about, activity centers, and, it's about placemaking. And so part of, and what you were alluding to earlier as well, is the role of public investment. So, if we were to look at a restructuring plan for Columbia Turnpike, road diets, those types of, more contemporary approaches to major corridors, like where you might have medians for pedestrians to cross, plantings to soften the appearance of that really wide right of way. So I think there's, and that's kind of some of the work I want to get to with this, is what is that exactly, to answer that question, is what does that mean? I think part of where the plan has been heading is for form-based codes, right? To have a regulation that is focused more on building form as opposed to use. And so one of the things that does is it may require developers and others looking to make investments to do certain kinds of projects that they may not otherwise do. They may not have the experience. They may not have, even the capital, right? You're not going to build the second story requirement in the B1, for example. We've been told a number of times that it's just not feasible to build up on the turnpike. But with the form-based code also comes, more flexibility for capital, right, to flow in there. So it's more use agnostic, within certain parameters. So if during a certain wave of investment, like we're seeing now, the idea is we need more housing. As long as it meets the code, and as long as it looks a certain way and meets the various site standards, residential, the B1 currently doesn't allow single family. Well, is that something that we want to revisit, for example? I don't know the answer to that, but the code would, as long as it looked a certain way, we might have, sort of, that type of development, like, single family attached, the kind of row housing, that you might see. And we've seen some proposals around that. So it's a really good question, Rick, and that's kind of the work, we're trying to do here. I don't know if that answers it.
Well, no, you're certainly addressing it, and I certainly appreciate it. When you say form-based, I take it the heart of that is, as opposed to actual, the more regulatory function of property use, under under your various zones, your respective zoning districts. When you say form-based, you're talking about, I take it at the heart of that is our aesthetics, correct? Basically, what it appears to be, appearance basically, or?
Well, yeah, there's
Is
an
that-
element of that, and the move toward form-based codes, and new urbanism in general, and sort of new town planning. You know, there's a lot of the criticism has focused on just that. It's aesthetics for those who can afford it. You know, I think if you look at the placemaking section, though, part of that is how do those buildings speak to and articulate to the public space? So
Mhm.
how do they frame the roadways? What kinds of opportunities for gathering are there? What types of
Mhm.
mix of activities, you know, do you encourage there? So you know, the code allows more uses, you know, under the under the theory that strict segregation of uses, like your standard Euclidean zoning, like we have right now,
Mhm.
you know, sort of tamps down some of that vibrancy. It doesn't, you know, you're not necessarily going to get those types of public spaces and those activity centers that sort of speak to the activities happen here, you know,
Right.
throughout the day. If you just sort of say, well, we want we want retail here, we want large retail over there, we want small retail over here. If it looks like, you know, if it looks like it frames the public space appropriately, you know, it could be 10,000 square feet or 1,000 square feet if it's retail, you know?
Right. I guess when when we talk about form-based code, it's presumably supposed to, foster uh, results that are predictable, as time goes on and as development ensues. I'm trying to recall, you currently in your office, we currently do not have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not have commercial design and architectural standards for developers, right?
That's right. And in fact, there's a placeholder in the current comprehensive zoning law for that. It
Okay.
wasn't added. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because this was something that I remember going back when we first undertook the comp plan, and it went out of my mind basically, and now it all of a sudden came back because you mentioned, it was your prompting here that sort of, made me kind of rediscover it. I mean, is that something that would be practicable for, obviously a separate engagement, I assume, obviously separate from what MJ is doing now, but would that be, first of all, would it be a worthwhile undertaking for East Greenbush? And secondly, would it be a practicable undertaking in terms of, going through the usual contractual services to achieve that sort of an end? What would you say? What would your feelings be about, something like that?
You know, there is the comp plan currently the draft currently talks about, you know, a hybrid approach where you do have some elements of both. So you have that sort of standard separation of uses, but the developments have to look a certain way. They also have to,
Right.
you know, like, and we have some of that now, right? That 2-story requirement is just it's starting to go down that road. The
Right.
maximum setback, that's also a concept from, you know, from that movement. So
Sure.
in terms of useful, and just, you know, the planning board gets into this already, you know, we want to see how this is going to look. You know, the Pinecrest Commercial Park development on Springhurst Drive,
Right.
very early on, we asked for renderings, and also, there was a conversation that the board had. Why don't you push that building on Springhurst up to the right of way? And the developer responded, and it's a better project for it.
Absolutely.
So, but they, the planning board had to, the discussions weren't extensive there. It was, okay, that's a really good idea. Let's look at that. And I think the developer there was committed to a higher quality product.
No,
And
George Shannon definitely achieved that, I think,
yeah, so you're not going to have that type of a developer all the time. And
Right.
in terms of making it transparent to what the town is looking for, it definitely reduces risk. It allows the developer to come to start planning their program for the site around some of those issues. It also
So you
allows the
keep it so
planning.
that the tail doesn't wag the, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it keeps it so that the tail doesn't wag the dog. You will periodically get a good developer like George Shannon and others, but not always. So maybe by having, commercial architectural design standards, the town is sort of setting the template. And so the tail doesn't wag the dog as development ensues throughout the town. That's sort of is that a schema that makes sense? Or
Yeah, yes, that is, yeah, because the planning board can apply those standards, and there might be options, but it shouldn't
Sure.
be misconstrued either as overly prescriptive,
Right. I'm sure you have to have flexibility as you develop something like that. It's got to be, use that word balance again, the proper balance, and yeah, I mean, I know, just as a real quick example, I know Tina and her family vacationed in Hyannis, and Marianne and I have been out there a lot. You look around there, you see that Cape Cod feel, if you will, of aesthetically of what's out there, and they definitely have those commercial. And it's not just Littleton commercial too, I think. Actually, I think it spills over into the residential end as well. But they have those design and architectural standards that, and again, I just use that as an example. But, the other thing I think that this would, just my humble opinion, but, this helps promote the overall vision, I think, right, for a comp plan. It helps you, actually achieve more of that vision ultimately that's set forth, within the comp plan.
yeah. And one of the things uh, that the NRI did is inventory architectural, important and historically important buildings in the town and there's a couple of different dimensions of that, because there's different developments over time in town, some of the older, I think the one National Register building is an old, I think a colonial, farmhouse. But then there's, like kit houses in Hampton Manor that are very unique. So yeah, like those design standards will allow the town also to achieve that sort of historical, meeting those goals toward historic preservation, reinforcing the existing neighborhoods and design vernacular, So yeah, and yeah, I think it will meet multiple objectives,
And maybe a third prong would be, would it not also, if they were, if they were put in place, would they not also help you as the director of planning as well as the planning board basically do your jobs, because it would, when you get proposals in, it would actually help make it easier for you and streamline the processes, so that things are more on a particular track, if you will, and just easier for you to process, in terms of the bureaucracy, if you will, of planning approvals.
Yeah, yes, because it makes things more predictable. And so the conversation from the beginning can be much more organized. And yeah, I absolutely. The more information that's out there, that's transparent, that's published, it makes a less it makes for more predictability and less risk.
Sure. I don't want to monopolize anymore. I appreciate being able to discuss this with you. I had some other notes here, but since we're going to be having an extension of our workshop, I can bring these up later on. So I do appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you. Thank you.
Rick, the other thing about focusing growth is prohibiting growth elsewhere.
Right.
There's that approach to it as well. Does anybody want to say anything about Regeneron and its relation or non-relationship to this plan? Because if you're looking at what's the dynamic that could spin this town off its axis and into something that's bigger than people want it to be, Regeneron has to be on the table. Now they have their Temple Lane campus. They can still buy Temple Farms and have that campus. They're on Discovery Drive and they're in the tech park, where they could also expand and are expanding in the tech park. My argument, and I don't know how we make this argument, is that should be it. If they start, unless they want to do something kind of cool and form-based on Columbia Turnpike, I think there's nowhere to put them. And right when they're done on Temple Lane, they will have 4,000 employees in town. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. It's funny when you do economic growth and things like that, we don't need jobs in town. We need housing because of those jobs and other things. But I don't know, I was talking to Adam about this. I don't know if we should ask Regeneron to review a draft, to see what their, would they be surprised? Would they feel it boxes them in? They're the 800-pound gorilla in East Greenbush. So I don't know what you want. I don't know how we deal with them in this plan. But I do know that it's the 800-pound gorilla that nobody's really talking about.
But I think your question there is the key, is how do you deal with something that grows exponentially in a comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Right.
And
if we were to do that,
at some
go
point,
ahead.
Go ahead.
they're
Go
going to
ahead.
exhaust the availability of land for development. That's going to run out. At some
Right.
point, there will not be any more land available for them to expand on.
Well, they keep finding it. So,
Right.
I don't know.
I think one thing we need to keep in mind is the legality of, as a matter of property right, it's really contingent on the zoning in terms of what they can do. They legally have the right, so long as the uses are compatible with what they want to do within the sort of holistically, the sort of the big picture of Regeneron's development. As long as they're in a position to make acquisitions and the property is zoned accordingly, it's not like, unfortunately, because government can't always do that, but we're not in a position necessarily to deny them.
Right.
We have to basically approve what they're legally allowed to do, but obviously constrain and somewhat regulated by our planning process. So there is that unfortunate,
No, that's fine. But Rick,
Yeah.
the other
I don't have to
thing
be
is,
critical about it, right?
no, and that's the way it works. But
Right,
let me,
exactly.
let me say something that will be music to your ears. I think what we have to do is tighten up and get as close to eliminating PDDs as we can get. Because
Yes,
the PDD is the insider's way to do anything they damn please in the
right.
town of East Greenbush. And if we're going to really do the work for a zoning map and zone things correctly,
You
Adam
want
and
to
I
stick to
talked,
it.
yeah, Adam and I talked about this, and he said a PDD should be the unicorn, if it's some
Exactly.
very, very special project that there's no other way to do it, and it's something that would add tremendously to the community. That's
Right.
one thing, but, and you're right, if Regeneron, wants to build an office building somewhere on the turnpike where it's zoned for it, there's little we could do. But what we can do is not allow them the run of the place. And I think the PDD, that was on my list of things to talk about, because
Good
we've had
point.
so much,
Excellent
we've had
point.
so much problem with the PDD. We don't know how to figure out the amenities package. We're not holding people's feet to the fire. And it just becomes, if you look at the 2008 zoning map, there's all of these residential buffer districts where, my opinion is when they couldn't figure out what else to do, they called it a residential buffer. And we've gotten everything from a casino to tons of apartment complexes proposed for a residential buffer zone, which is supposed to be, low density. And the way that they do it is a PDD.
You're absolutely right. When you think about it, when we get to our zoning phase, we should probably try to keep in mind that the better we make our zoning, the better our zoning is. You can almost argue that really should mean fewer PDDs, as you're saying, I think.
Yeah, if we get it right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. But the PDD has become, to me, such a problem. It's become, if you look at how many PDDs the town has done in the last 10 years, it speaks to several things. It speaks first off to, forgive me, but insider politics. It also speaks to the fact that the zoning map wasn't done correctly, clearly.
You got to wonder that.
Yeah, because it keeps becoming the default on these projects. And Rick, you and I have had long conversations about the amenities package, which should be like a dollar for dollar return on the things the advantages you get by doing a PDD. And it's like pulling teeth with these developers to figure out an amenities package.
Right.
So at the very least, we have to tighten it up to the point where it's not worth doing.
Well, right. And PDD should be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing you right.
Yeah, Adam used the word unicorn, and I like that. If it's some like magical project that,
right.
that like we could get an athletic complex, that would serve the whole town, and, and it crosses zoning, a couple of zones or whatever. I don't think we ban PDDs, but we really got to tighten them up.
Should be the exception.
Yes, that's the word. That's the word.
And as far as the amenities packaging, I always thought, again, if we're, you keep it the exception and not the rule throughout town. I thought having a valuation component as part of the PDD application, that would enable the town board to literally objectify the value of what we're granting as part of that PDD versus what we're getting as part of that amenity pack. You can literally put you can make it an accounting exercise, and you take the subjectivity. You're not going to fully take subjectivity out of it, but you inject more objectivity and reduce the subjectivity, I think.
Yeah, it's purely subjective at the moment.
At the moment, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we've got to fix that. One more thing I wanted to raise was the issue of housing. we have, if you read the technical memo on housing,
Mhm.
it starts by saying that the trend that we had talked about, which is a trend towards multi-family housing, had really picked up steam in the capital region. But it also says somewhere around 2015, that trend seems to have reversed to some extent. So there's no clear direction in what is, being proposed or preferred by planners. But what we are finding is we are getting inundated with, over the last couple of years, with multifamily housing proposals. And all of them, not all of them, but several of them on Thompson Hill were, offered to us as PDDs in a residential buffer zone. So, but the point is that what the plan says in its current form is that for both young professionals and baby boomers, that multifamily housing is important. It says that if you want to bring back the turnpike, for example, you want to have, it within proximity of commercial entities, retail, and all that stuff.
Right.
And yet we are a community, 76% of our housing is owner occupied, basically single or two-family housing.
Yeah.
We haven't had great success with apartments in town. I think Forest Point is probably the best. But we don't, and the Kenzie now technically wants to do senior housing. Amador has a proposal on Luther Road, right off Luther Road, across from the library, and that's a really good firm.
Right.
They're good builders, and they want to do senior housing. And I think there's less opposition in the community to senior apartments than there is to just multifamily housing. But I do think we're an old-fashioned town where people believe in owner occupation. You buy your house and you live there. And yet, I worked in the Division of Housing for 12 years, and Adam and I discussed this too. Under the Fair Housing Act, you cannot prohibit any kind of housing. You have to be open to workforce housing, to subsidized housing, all of that. Again, from my background in the Division of Housing, is there's such little diversity in East Greenbush, and part of the way that starts to change is through apartments, through bringing people from all socioeconomic levels into town. So I think my own feeling is, as far as the plan, it needs to be liberal in its interpretation of, we can't put in the plan that we won't take certain kind of housing because that's discrimination. And the city of Yonkers will tell you it can cost you hundreds of millions of dollars if you do that. But we do need to put a pretty broad array of housing options. And then what that opens up is when people come in with projects that they want to propose, almost every project can say it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I think this, as a board, we've gone back and forth on apartments, versus single family housing. And again, that's something I just want you to think about as we move through the review of this plan.
Another part of that is when you're looking at housing, like think of Regeneron, they're bringing in 4,000 jobs. Not all of those jobs. There's going to be a lot of those jobs are going to be that workforce type job. Those are not people who can afford houses in East Greenbush market right now.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I have
and on top of that, because those are going to be the $30,000 to $50,000, $60,000 range. And it's going to be your lab techs. It's going to be your secretaries. It's going to be, some of your custodial crews and maintenance crews. And there's going to be a lot of those people, and they're great jobs, but they can't afford a $300,000 house on that kind of salary.
Right.
Not realistically.
Right. No, it's true.
So having some smaller homes, having one-story homes, because a lot of people are looking to retire or looking to downsize and don't want to do stairs anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm surprised we
So-
haven't gotten those proposals.
I would love to see more housing that fits that kind of niche in a way.
Yeah.
That's lower, not necessarily lower income, but for that workforce or senior who can't do those stairs or doesn't want to do the stairs and wants lower maintenance,
Oh, yeah.
wants to
yeah,
have less house to deal with.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. It can be a mix of workforce housing, maybe some senior housing mixed in with it. I don't know. But I think it is something that we need to keep an open mind on.
True.
Mhm. Mhm.
True. We have someone in town hall who lives in Forest Point, and it is dreadfully expensive to live there. And that's not, they're good apartments, but they're not luxury apartments. The cost
Right.
of the rent and utilities
Right.
is, I don't know,
Exorbitant.
you might as well buy a house because it's
Exactly.
crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and then town center's coming, and we don't know, I think how the town center experience plays out is going to have an influence on what happens after it.
Agreed.
you
Mhm.
know? So,
Just
and
just to keep an eye on the clock, we're at 7:16.
Yep.
So if we have a planned end time, did we want to loop in comments from our department heads who have joined us, or did we want to get final comments from town board? How did you want
well,
to?
one thing I do want to do is, I know the chief and assistant chief, we had a conversation in my office one day, and they raised the issue of some things that were submitted to Jackie and MJ that were there among their issues that didn't get taken account into the plan. So can we talk about that a little bit, Chief?
Certainly. I did connect with Adam today and have forwarded him what we had kind of reproposed. The meeting went very well when we met with Jackie, and she took down a lot of information, but then it looked like it kind of transcribed into only pretty much really touching on about the SRO program primarily with the department. And we'd be remiss if we didn't speak about a lot of the other things that go on in the department as far as other in the dispatch center as well. So I had kind of took some of the information, Jack, that I'd shared with you from my annual report, used some of that and some of the other stuff I had previously shared with Jackie, and Adam has that now.
Okay. You did notice that they have put a new police station in one of the recommendations.
Good.
But if you look at the prioritization, and this is important, Chief, it's midterm priority, not short term. Because, I know the chief now well enough, so she's sitting there thinking, and by midterm he means 6 months instead of 3 months that I want.
No, 18 months.
18
I get it. Not 12, 18. I totally understand.
Okay, I was on the right track. I just had the wrong numbers. But you're Adam, you have that stuff now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and things like I did notice too, Elaine, Chief Rosinsky, that things like the accreditation, for example, that we should probably have that in there. So
Right.
yeah,
Do you want the photographs of the day we got it?
I wonder who would have been in that photograph.
Yeah. Joanne tried to throw one out the other day that had me and Stephanie and Jim and the chief, and we had a conversation about that. I still have it. So anything else you want to add, Chief? Are you good?
No, I think we're good with that. And Adam and I are going to connect further in regards to some other things as well.
Okay. And Danny, is there anything you want to jump in on?
Thank you.
I was thinking of the housing and what Bridget was saying, and that's kind of unicorn housing when you have ranches and all the cost of a house is in infrastructure and site work, foundation. Ranches are more expensive to build. It'd be great to, build a large amount of ranches in one community, but it's not cost effective for a builder to do it. So it's cheaper to
Mhm.
go up. The
Right.
Spinney is a good example of like senior housing that's connected together, more of a ranch style. And, if we can allow a community to, basically build something like that, that'd be kind of different. You know what I mean? But as far as, everyone's trying to build apartments because it's the cheapest and most economical moneymaker for them to do, you know.
Mhm.
I own apartments myself. Do I think that we should have all these apartment complexes? Not really. Do I think we need some? Yes. But, certain areas you definitely want to preserve, to single family homes or, twin homes. Del Mar has a large area that has, twin homes, and they're basically my mom's best friend. Or, I mean, most of the people in there are 60 and older that are in those twin homes, and they're ranch style, 2,400 square feet, big homes.
Mhm.
Yep. All right. Anybody else want to add anything before we're a little bit early to go into executive session, but I think where we go from here is let Adam spin out his web, and then we're going to look at it. I think the first step to that is Adam and I will go through it in excruciating detail and kind of see how, see what works, maybe some things that don't work, because we're going to have to review what Adam does. And so I'm going to try to digest it some with Adam, so we can present it to you, first of all, in all of its glory and with the changes noted and all of that, but also present it to you in kind of a summary form that here's what we think was changed. Because the other issue we have is that the community had a lot of voice in the draft as it's currently constituted. And we can't move too far away from that.
Correct.
Personally, I'm willing, having read all the comments in the community survey, and I'm not going to get Holly started here, but like everybody in town wants a pool. And, I got 3 years to go.
Well,
I will
it's funny
fight
you mention
everyone
that.
in this town. What's that, Holly?
It's funny you mentioned that because I was at a park today where there's a really nice splash pad.
Yep.
And I thought it would be the perfect kind of recreational thing to have in our town park or the Hampton Manor Park. It was a really good size, not too big. And I'm bringing back some pictures of it.
Yeah, no, and Rensselaer has one, and we actually started planning for that. We ran into a bit of an infrastructure problem, didn't we, Dan, with the town
water.
park? And
Yeah,
I think actually the Hampton Lake Park is better equipped for that, isn't it, Dan?
With the water,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or actually Woodland Park too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Woodland
quite a
Woodland
bit of
Park.
room there.
There's a lot of room there. That's
And
probably
water
because
there,
there isn't that much room in the Hampton.
And there's water there.
That would be the best idea.
Yeah, so forget the pool, Holly. We'll talk splash pads in the
We're going to talk splash
midterm.
pads, definitely.
Yeah, we'll talk in the midterm, not the Chiefs midterm, but the actual midterm as a priority. But I use that as an example of not everything that was in those comments can be taken literally, or that we have to include them in the plan. But some things like a teen center or an athletic complex or a community center, I think the town really needs something like that. And
You're
once we almost had, not almost had, but we had a proposal where the Greenbush Inn was to put a soccer complex in there. But then the site really didn't lend itself to that. So there are some things like that that I think could be a real morale booster for the town. teenagers have nothing to do. Tina, am I right?
That is right. And there's even less to do with the pandemic. So
Yeah, yeah, they're
Right.
doing nothing.
we did have some preliminary conversations about teen centers and coordinating, collaborating with the library and
Yep.
And the why.
and you know, that was pre-pandemic and things changed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I actually had a meeting with Jeff Simons today to talk about shared services. And we talked about putting a work group together, a couple of our guys and a couple of his guys, and talking about how we can save money through shared services. But we both got more animated when we talked about how we could do shared events. You know, how we could, like I told him that we're planning as soon as we get back to life, having a party in the town park, that, you know, a Liberation Day party. He said, count them in, because people will want to do that.
They really will.
But maybe working with the school district, we can come up with, you know, some ways to use like the Red Barn for a Friday night dance. You know, some that the school could even sponsor and chaperone or not. But that was something that was really interesting in the comments, and it corresponds to what people say when they call me or they email me or they come into my office. Whereas the pool, it may just be because I don't like the idea. I hate the idea. It's ridiculous for a municipality in this day and age to go in the pool business. Maybe that's why people stopped talking to me about it. But
Well, we did the cost analysis. I mean, in fairness, we did the work on this.
Yeah. And it was expensive.
It was expensive, and we were informed by 3 municipalities that we contacted to get their budget. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. And these are the municipalities that everyone in the comments was saying, why can't we be like Colony? Why can't we be like Bethlehem?
Right.
And we are actually following some of the advice they gave us, because and the other part about it is personally, maybe this shouldn't count. I'd be worried 24 hours a day if there was a pool that the town had liability and responsibility for it. And I would be asking the chief every day to put like 6 officers over there to guard the perimeter. So that would be tough. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a labor issue, and I would ask the board's indulgence to invite Commissioner Fiacco, Human Resource Manager Lisa Borst, and then 2 people, 1 employee and 1 union representative, and also our attorney Jay Gervin into the executive session. So I make that motion. May I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay.
Supervisor Conway,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Tierney,
Yes.
Counselor Matters,
Yes.
Counselor Fritz.
Yes.
Okay. So the public portion of the meeting is over. Adam, so you will put Tina in charge here?
Yeah, let me, yes, I'll do that. Make host. And I'll stop the, Tina, you may need to stop the recording.
Yeah, let's make sure we've got that.
The stream is done now.